Let me begin with a confession that will sound heretical in our age of instant certainty. Intelligence is rarely impressive at first encounter. It does not enter the room shouting its credentials. It does not reduce the world to slogans. On the contrary, it tends to hesitate, to qualify, to interrupt itself with doubt. This alone makes it deeply unpopular in modern political culture. When I am asked why Charlie Kirk sounds intelligent to so many people, my answer is disappointingly plain. He sounds smart because he is never unsure, and to the uninformed ear, certainty is indistinguishable from understanding. Kirk does not reason toward conclusions. He delivers them fully formed, as if thought itself were a tedious preliminary that he has already completed on the audience's behalf. I have spent much of my life debating men who relied on this exact posture. Their advantage was never knowledge, but asymmetry. They spoke to audiences who had not been trained to recognize how knowledge is built, challenged, and corrected. In such conditions, confidence fills the vacuum left by education. Speed replaces depth. Fluency substitutes for evidence. What Kirk offers is not intellectual discovery, but reassurance. He tells his listeners that the world is simpler than it appears, that their instincts are sufficient, and that doubt is a weakness imposed by elites. This is an enormously comforting message. It relieves the listener of the burden of thinking while flattering them for not having done so. True intelligence, however, is never so obliging. It unsettles, it complicates, it forces reconsideration. That is precisely why it so often loses to performance in the marketplace of modern ideas. Kirk does not sound intelligent because he is learned. He sounds intelligent because his audience has never been taught to distrust certainty itself. One of the earliest warning signs that a speaker is not engaged in serious thought is his impatience with context. Context is inconvenient. It introduces history, causation, contingency, and worst of all, counterexamples. It reminds us that ideas do not float freely in the air, but are born in circumstances, shaped by power, error, and accident. Charlie Kirk treats context not as a tool, but as an obstacle. Observe how history appears in his rhetoric. It arrives flattened, disinfected, and obedient. A founding father is summoned like a ventriloquist dummy. A quotation is produced without its surrounding argument. A century of conflict is compressed into a moral anecdote. To anyone who has studied history as a discipline, this is intellectual vandalism. To the uninformed listener, however, it sounds impressively learned. Why does this trick work so well? Because mentioning the past is now mistaken for understanding it. Dropping names replaces grappling with ideas. The audience hears familiar symbols and assumes depth has been achieved. They are not trained to ask what has been omitted, distorted, or simplified beyond recognition. I have long argued that context is what separates argument from propaganda. Remove it, and any claim can be made to sound reasonable. Kirk understands this instinctively. Economic figures appear without methodology. Social trends are discussed without causation. Moral claims are asserted without philosophical grounding. Each absence goes unnoticed by those who do not know what should be present. In this way, clarity is manufactured by subtraction. Complexity is not refuted. It is erased. The result feels lucid, decisive, and smart. But this clarity is artificial, like the smoothness of a surface that has been aggressively sanded down. To the informed ear, what remains is hollow. To the uninformed, it sounds like insight. And once again, confidence does the rest of the work. There is a persistent illusion in public life that simple answers are not merely preferable, but morally superior. Complexity is treated as evasion. Nuance is dismissed as weakness. This is not an accident. It is a cultural habit that rewards certainty and punishes thought. Charlie Kirk thrives precisely because he understands this instinct. He offers his audience a world that has been aggressively simplified. Structural problems are reduced to individual failings. Historical forces become matters of character. Vast social systems are collapsed into slogans that fit neatly on a placard or a tweet. To the unprepared listener, this feels like clarity at last. Confusion dissolves. Anxiety recedes. Someone finally seems to get it. But simplicity, when divorced from reality, is not wisdom. It is sedation. It dulls curiosity and rewards intellectual laziness. I have always maintained that real understanding rarely feels satisfying in the moment. It disturbs settled beliefs. It demands revision. It forces us to accept that our instincts may be unreliable guides. Kirk spares his audience that discomfort. He replaces inquiry with affirmation, His listeners are not asked to learn, only to agree. And agreement, when delivered confidently, feels remarkably like intelligence to those who have never been taught to value doubt. This is why his arguments travel so well among the uninformed. They require nothing from the listener except recognition. No effort, no revision, no risk. Much has been made of Charlie Kirk's confrontational style, particularly in public exchanges with young or inexperienced opponents. These encounters are presented as proof of intellectual dominance. They are nothing of the sort. They are performances designed for spectators, not arguments designed to uncover truth. Confidence overwhelms hesitation. Volume defeats reflection. Speed humiliates caution. The audience mistakes this imbalance for victory. They confuse rhetorical aggression with correctness, just as earlier generations mistook the loudest preacher for the most devout. I have never been impressed by triumphs over the unprepared. Argument is not a boxing match, and thinking is not a sport scored by applause. The true test of an idea is how it survives contact with equals, those who know the counter-arguments, understand the evidence, and are not easily intimidated. Kirk avoids such tests. Instead, he stages encounters in which dominance can be mistaken for insight. The uninformed audience sees a winner and assumes truth has prevailed. They never ask the crucial question, what would it take to prove this man wrong? Without that question, no argument ever needs to be sound. The uninformed are not stupid. They are simply unequipped. They have not been taught how arguments are constructed, how evidence is weighed, or how claims are falsified. They listen for confidence rather than coherence. They reward certainty rather than accuracy. Charlie Kirk understands this perfectly. He does not speak against ignorance, he speaks to it. He flatters it by never challenging it. He reassures his audience that their instincts are sufficient and that doubt is an imposition from hostile elites. This is a powerful bond. A challenged audience might drift away. A reassured audience becomes loyal. Kirk's success lies not in persuasion, but in confirmation. He tells people what they already wish to believe, and he tells it to them with unwavering conviction. In such an environment, intelligence is not required, only consistency of tone. One of the great tragedies of modern discourse is the redefinition of doubt as a moral failing. To admit uncertainty is now treated as surrender. To revise a position is seen as hypocrisy. This inversion has done more damage to public reasoning than any single ideology. I have always argued the opposite. Doubt is not weakness. It is discipline. It is the mind's immune system. It prevents belief from hardening into dogma. Charlie Kirk exhibits none of it. His positions are immutable, not because they are well tested, but because they are never tested at all. The uninformed listener does not recognize this rigidity as a flaw. They experience it as strength. Consistency is mistaken for principle. In reality, it is often just intellectual inertia. A mind that never changes is not strong, it is simply closed. When performance replaces thought, the consequences extend beyond mere annoyance. Public discourse degrades. Policy becomes theater. Moral certainty replaces ethical reasoning. The loudest voices dominate, not because they are correct, but because they are relentless. False intelligence crowds out real inquiry. It teaches audiences to distrust expertise, to resent learning, and to celebrate ignorance so long as it is confidently expressed. This is not accidental damage. It is the natural outcome of rewarding sound over substance. Kirk is not unique in this regard. He is merely effective. And effectiveness, in our age, is too often confused with merit. The remedy is not censorship, which merely substitutes one form of laziness for another. Nor is it counter-shouting, which confirms the illusion that truth is a volume contest. The remedy is intellectual training. Learn to distrust fluency. Ask what evidence supports a claim. Ask what would falsify it. Be wary of anyone who never revises a position. Intelligence evolves. Ideology ossifies. Read slowly. Read people who disagree with you. Learn enough history to fear certainty and enough science to respect uncertainty. Above all, remember this: intelligence does not announce itself. It reveals itself over time, through humility, correction, and restraint. A man who sounds smart to the uninformed may simply be speaking to an audience that has never been taught how to listen.